Welcome to Leaders Arise with Joyful Julie. Join us as we explore life-changing, freedom-releasing biblical truths to empower leaders and patriots to reach their full potential, cancel out fraudulent beliefs, and increase in influence and financial success. Let's get started. Hi, Leaders Arise Tribe. It's Julie again. And I am really excited about this upcoming episode, Communication Secrets for Success. I'm also going to be doing a little bit something different on this podcast. If you go to my YouTube channel, Julie Court, you'll be able to see this episode, number 26, in video. I'm going to try to describe the things that I put up on the screen for the video. But today's subject is going to be on communication. And I was inspired for this episode because I ran across a statistic. And in this statistic, I saw something that was kind of shocking to me. And it was shocking to me because I was like, I'm a leadership and communications coach. And it was shocking to me to see this statistic that was talking about LinkedIn, which is a business communication site. And so on this LinkedIn episode or post, it said, communication remains the most wanted job skill on LinkedIn. And as a relationship, I know that communication plays such a big role on relationships. And I care so much about relationships because God cares about relationships. And the first sentence of this post by this Axios communicator, Eleanor Hawkins, said that communication is the second most in-demand job skill for the second year in a row. And I was like, wow, a second year in a row. And I just think we see our families falling apart. And what do we need? We need better communication. We need stronger relationships. We see companies that are going out of business and they're struggling with inflation. They're struggling with the effects of COVID and on the pandemic. And what do they need to do? They need strong teams to survive a tumultuous time in our country and in our communities. And I think that if we tried to improve our communication skills, then we could be more successful and we could have more hope for the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play the slide. And the second slide here says, so for those of you who are listening, I'll read it to you. It's a picture of a beautiful tree. It's got to be like 200 years old. And it's full of greenery and moss on the, and in the soil underneath, it says trust, respect, loyalty, and communication are 4 essential parts of a successful relationship. And it sounds so easy when we read it on the screen. Trust, respect, loyalty, and communication. It sounds like a bit of common sense to me. But under the stress of the things that we're experiencing, in the stress of things that we might have experienced in our childhood, the stress of betrayal, the stress of the economic conditions that we're living in, things that might have happened in our families, in good friend relationships, church splits, loyalty isn't necessarily a given. And true communication takes a bit of practice, and it is an essential skill set that many people do not have in order to have successful relationships. And so as we go about this, you can see here on the screen, or you can hear me if you're on the podcast, that how would I describe an unhealthy culture? And when I give talks on communication or on leadership, I share this graphic because unfortunately, some people start out relationships with a huge platform of mistrust and fear. And then they put that into a process of speaking half truths and playing mind games with people and manipulating them, trying to get them to do what they want. And they end up with a lot of sabotage and a lot of status quo where it's not really a positive atmosphere, and it ends up being a no-win situation. But when we add trust, respect, loyalty, and communication, what happens? Then we get a brilliant thinking culture. And we can start out by building trust and respect. Now, that is not a small feat because only high-performing teams, high-performing marriages, high-performing schools have trust and respect as the foundational bedrock of their community or of their group or of their team or of their family. Yeah, so, and in this brilliant thinking culture, what happens is when we build on an atmosphere of respect and trust, then we can actually open ourselves up because we're safe. We have building upon, like it says in the Bible, to build our life upon the rock, on something that is stable and unchanging. Then we can actually look at problems and we can begin to identify them and we can begin to solve them. We can get out of the culture of blame and we can get in the culture of support. We can get out of the culture of being afraid to admit you have a problem to the culture of learning. We can get out of the culture of putting other people down and a culture of blame. And instead, we can get a culture of connection and rising together. And the result of this is growth and teamwork. The results in a family are growth and connection and soulmate relationships. So today, I'd like to think or talk about the communication secrets that lead to success. And so I'm going to go ahead and take down the shared screen today on the screen and get back to me, because I want to talk to you a little bit right now about how do we create a successful atmosphere or team culture or family culture in order to be able to actually be able to be safe enough to talk about our problems, to open ourselves up to admitting that we're not perfect, to showing our weaknesses to someone else, and then working toward growing, learning, and becoming the people that our families need us to be, our coworkers need us to be, people in culture, people at church or out in the schools, what they need us to be. So the first thing I'd like to say is we need to try to actually be honest and not lie. Don't fake. Be honest and put your best foot forward as far as in the communication. In the business world, I would say be professional. But these days, I think everywhere we go, we need to learn to be authentic. In my coaching program, one of the things, the pillars that we work on is communication. And my real short marketing tag for that portion is that I like to help equip people to be able to have brave, crucial conversations. Because the thing is we have to be able to work through conflict, to talk about our problems and to find solutions, mutual understanding that leads to mutual beneficial solutions, no matter what environment we're in. But how do we build this atmosphere so that we can be safe? Another characteristic that we need to look for is to be reliable, to do what you say that you're going to do, and to honor your promises. That when you say you'll do something, you show up, you do the work, and you come back into the relationship contributing something. This is true in a family, it's true in a team, it's true in a church, it's true in a Boy Scout troop, it's true everywhere. People want to work with people who are going to do what they say they're going to do. And this leads us into the importance of integrity. Integrity, we have to have where people realize that they can count on us and that they can depend on us. So we need to be consistent and even sometimes a little systematic, because communication skills do not develop overnight. They improve over time. Once we've created those bonds that can actually sustain communication growth, which sustains relationship growth, which actually produces the kind of families that we want and the kind of results that our employers are going to be looking for. So sometimes, however, conflict comes up. And this is where things start to get sticky, because it's easy when there's not a problem, because our emotions are more stable. We don't feel threatened. We don't feel like someone's going to blame us. But then what happens when conflict comes up, when we have to find the source of what's stopping us from being able to meet our needs at work or meet our needs of our spouse or our children? Okay, so basically, the diagram that I showed talked about when we have distrust and fear at the beginning, it negates being able to have safe, brave, crucial conversations. But when we start out with respect, when we start out with an attitude that what the other person has to say is vitally important, then we can set a stage and we can develop a relationship with that foundation that we can go in to conflicts and problem areas, and we won't be so worried about someone blaming us and that it will be our fault. All right, so we can actually choose whether we're going to maintain a relationship where we focus on criticizing the person, blaming the person, or whether we're going to actually embrace supporting the person and examining and getting the true problem out in the open and being able to talk about the problem and looking for solutions. So I can't think of a better tool that will help you with this than active listening. And so I have a document that I give for free called the Successful Communicator Guide. And this is just an introductory document that I send to people who might want to work with me in coaching. But in this document, I try to give some of my best material to helping people if they would just apply it and learn the skill all by themselves. Now, most people, if they could have learned it by themselves, they would have. Some people actually need help. And so as a coach, it's my privilege and honor to give them the hope and help that they need and deserve in order to develop the skill set of communication. Becoming an expert communicator is a lifelong process. And great leaders can somehow communicate and converse with people in all sorts of situations. However, sometimes our past experiences, our identity, and our values, and maybe our inability to manage our own thoughts and emotions sometimes affects our ability to create situations for mutual understanding. And because we lack mutual understanding, we have difficulty coming up with solutions. So today we're going to explore the idea of active listening. And this skill set reaps great rewards in your personal and in your work relationships. So one of the reasons why I love to teach active listening is because when we learn to step back and not just be all about sharing what we want, what we need, and how it's someone else's fault, but when we actually create that safe environment and we can talk about the issue openly and open up our heart or open up the truthometer and get some of those things out in the open, it shows interest and it communicates value. And then that other person can begin, once they feel heard and once they feel valued, then they can be interested in what you have to say. So in the active listening role play, I like to talk about that we have two roles, the speaker role and the listener role. And so one of the unusual things is when people are talking, a lot of times people really aren't listening for what the other person has to say. Many times they're just listening so that they can find something that they want to answer with next, so that they can talk and the other person that they have something to contribute. Well, in active listening, when we're dealing with a problem or a conflict, the thing is we actually want to hear not only what they say, but what they mean, and lead them into communicating openly about the problem. So, and when someone has the speaker role in active listening, they get to talk, and then the listener doesn't tell their opinion, but they repeat back to the speaker what they thought they heard. Because sometimes between it coming out of the other person's mouth and entering into our ear and being processed in our head, sometimes we don't really hear what they're actually meaning, or we don't listen for their voice inflection. We don't listen to how it might, we don't look at the facial reaction. We don't look sometimes at what the tremble in the voice or their body position that could indicate that they're having actually an emotional reaction as well. So when the person who has the speaker role, who begins talking about the issue, the active listener then repeats back to the speaker what they thought they heard. They might say something like, "What I heard you saying is this." And then the speaker gets to confirm, "Yes, that's what I said." And they might add another sentence or two. "This is what I really meant. Yeah, and then I add this as well." And then the listener, once again, says, "Wow, so you kind of expanded that, and what I hear you saying, and this is what I think you're feeling. Is that correct?" And the person then will begin to either, yes, affirm or deny what you were perceiving about them, not your own opinion, until you get to the place where the speaker says, "Yep, that's it." And then it's time to transition to swap roles. Now, this might seem a bit clunky at first, but the thing is you want to get to the point where the speaker feels heard and understood. because it's going to bring out in going back and forth, you're going to bring out details, feelings, ideas, lies, all sorts of things that are going to give you great clues to why things aren't working and what direction you might be able to go in to solve the problem. So then as we switch roles, the listener becomes the speaker and the speaker becomes the listener. And then the original listener, who is now speaker number 2, okay, it's their turn, they get to actually share their view of what's going on. And then the listener, who is actually speaker number 1, gets to focus solely on what the speaker now is saying. And they could have an entirely different viewpoint because remember, we're having a conflict. So then they're going to say, this is what I hear you saying. Is that right? And then they get to affirm or add to what they're actually trying to communicate. And then that's going to go on until the second person is affirmed. And then we're going to flip roles again until some clue is going to come out in one of these conversations where someone is going to, some light bulb is going to go on, and the thing that is tying up the problem is going to be identified and possible solutions are going to become apparent. Now, this sounds a little different in personal relationships versus a business situation, a business conflict. But in business conflicts, if we are not creating a place where that person feels safe, where that person feels respected and trusted and valued, they are not going to feel like opening up and talking about the problem and having all the blame and all of the condemnation poured on their head. And so in my book, in the Communicate and Connect chapter, it talks about ways that when we're dealing with conflicts, the unhealthy responses that can happen and the isolation that people can retreat into, the anger where people begin to personally attack other people, the distrust that can happen. And so the thing is what we want to do in active listening is we want to move from that unhealthy atmosphere and learn and be working consciously to create a trust and respect atmosphere in solving problems at our homes and at work. So I hope that today has been helpful for you. I would encourage you to log on to newlifefortoday.com and go ahead and use the connect button to contact me, the contact button to contact me, and just request the Successful Communicator Guide. And I will go ahead and email that to you free of charge. If you're interested in private coaching, you can go to the coaching tab, the consulting tab, and you can find out more about the Unleash the Leader Within program. Because there are many times when, in order to have professional or personal success, we need to deal with the trauma of the past, the trauma that we're currently going through. We need to be able to have identities that can withstand pressure and stress of today's society. We need to have a maximized brilliant thinking mindset. And we need to learn to have communication skill sets in order to build the life that we will love, because Jesus died to give us an abundant life. And I truly believe that Jesus was a great communicator and wants us to learn to relate to each other, to give worth and value to each other, and to be able to work through our problems so that we can have healthy families, healthy companies, healthy churches, healthy schools, and to be able to just have our best life now. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of Leaders Arise. And you can watch the video on my YouTube channel, Julie Court, or you can listen to or share, follow the podcast on multiple platforms now. And we look forward, I look forward to your feedback. I hope that you take some of our poll on Spotify. And as always, you can go to newlifefortoday.com and request topics that we will be able to do future podcasts about, things that you're interested in as well. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode of Leaders Arise. For more information about my newsletter, speaking events, and coaching services, see newlifefortoday.com.